Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is brought to you by the Friends in Recovery community, a thriving network of individuals who are fighting back against the stigma of addiction. Join our hosts as they speak up about the real issues of addiction, treatment, and recovery. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Now, here are your friends in recovery.
And Happy New Year to everyone. I have a sobriety date. It's January 26th of 1989. I haven't found it necessary to drink or use any other substances since that day. I believe it's by the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous. I have a sponsor. My sponsor has a sponsor, and I sponsor other men. And if you're sponsorless, I suggest you get a sponsor, right? Because we all need help with this, right? I can't do this alone, right? And so I learned that early on, right? I can't do this alone. So anyway, it's a pleasure to meet everyone and see everyone. I hope all is well. And so I was going to start today with, there's no coincidences. We had been talking about this for a couple of months or whatever, just kind of trying to put this thing together. And me and Ed have been going back and forth. And so then we said, okay, well, we'll do it the first Monday of January to start off the year. And so, of course, this morning I got up and I did my normal routine, right? So my normal routine is I get up. Now I'm not an expert at the steps, not an expert at Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't speak for Alcoholics Anonymous. This is just my experience. This is my strength, and this is my hope, right? And everything that I speak about, I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, but I don't speak for Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm just sharing my experience and my strength and my hope with this 12-step program. And so I get up this morning, early on in my recovery. I got a temporary sponsor, right? I came here in 1980. In 1988, December of 1988, roughly, and I went to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I heard the suggestion that if you're here, you should probably get a temporary sponsor. And I guess I didn't really know what that was. I didn't really know much about AA. I didn't know much about recovery. Myself personally, I was in a jam, right? I was in a jam. I had just gotten arrested, and I was looking at some jail time, and of course, my life was unmanageable, and I didn't even know it, right? Or maybe I did know it, right? But I didn't know why my life was unmanageable. I hadn't put two and two together yet, right? I had a lot of issues in my life, but I never equated it to the alcohol. I always equated it to the people, to the places, to the things, to the situations, right? I always equated my bad luck to life, right? Never thinking that, oh, maybe it's the booze or maybe it's other things, right? It was always something else. And so, but at this particular time, I had to take a look at myself, right? For the first time in my life, I really had to take a look at myself, right? Because I was in a lot of trouble. I had been in trouble before, but it wasn't trouble like this, right? I had been in trouble before, but it wasn't like I was looking at going to jail or, whatever. It was just the usual stuff, right? The DUIs, the car accidents, the loss of relationships, the loss of jobs, right? The losses, right? I had a lot of losses along the way, but I never equated it to alcohol. I always equated it to something else, right? I always pointed the finger, right? And so, but for this particular time in my life, for the first time in my life, I really had to take a look at the man in the mirror. And so I went to the meeting, and it was suggested that I get a sponsor, and a temporary sponsor. And that's what I did. I listened to the meeting. I sat there, I listened. The other thing they said was take the cotton out of your mouth, stick it in your ears, and listen. Take the cotton out of your ears, stick it in your mouth, and listen. And so that's what I did. For the first time in my life, I listened. And because prior to that also, I'm a self-centered, it's really all about me type of guy. And also I had that other disease of know-it-all, right? I knew it all. And little did I know, I knew nothing. And a matter of fact, today I know less now than I did before, right? But needless to say, I got this temporary sponsor, and he suggested that I do 90 meetings in 90 days and that I should listen and not speak. And I said I would. All right, because I didn't really know. The other thing I heard was, listen, what do you know about staying sober? And to be honest with you, recovery. And I really, for the first time in my life, I was honest with myself and other people. I didn't know much. I didn't know anything about being sober. I didn't know anything about recovery. I only knew about drinking, right? I only knew about how terrible my life was, how I was in trouble, how I needed help, right? And so I listened. And I started going to meetings. So I started going they said, if you drank every day, you should probably go to a meeting every day. And so that's what I did. I started going to meetings every day, and I started to listen. And slowly but surely, my ears began to open, and I began to hear the story of my life. Right? I began to hear the story of my life. I would listen to other men, I would listen to other women, and I would hear them share their truth. And instead of my head going like this, instead of pointing the finger at everybody else, my head started going up and down, and I started to hear these little things. And then I just started to say to myself, maybe that's it. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I am. Maybe I am an alcoholic. But I still hadn't decided yet, right? I still hadn't made a decision, right? I still hadn't admitted it yet, right? Now, they went around the room at this first meeting, and I heard men, because I went to a men's meeting for the first time. That was one of my first meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was in this room with a bunch of men, and they started going around the room at the beginning of the meeting, and they started to admit that they were alcoholics, right? They would go around the room. They would say, hey, my name is Dave. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, I'm John. I'm an alcoholic, blah, blah, blah. And then by the time it got to me, what did I do? I did what everybody else did. I said, hi, I'm Rich. I'm an alcoholic. Now, I didn't know if I was an alcoholic. I wasn't sure, I was just kind of all new to me. So, what did I do? I don't know. I guess I admitted I was an alcoholic, right? Without even knowing I was an alcoholic. And so that's what I did, just to kind of be part of, not knowing if I really wanted to do this deal, or, if I was what I was. And anyway, I started going to meetings on a daily basis. They said if you drank on a daily basis, you should go to a meeting on a daily basis. And so that's what I did. I started going to meetings. And then I started getting introduced to different books, right? So I got introduced to the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I received the Big Book Alcoholics Anonymous. And they said that I should probably read the first 164 pages of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And then after I do that, if I'm an alcoholic, I can certainly move forward. And if I didn't think I was an alcoholic, I could certainly go back to doing what I was doing. And so that's what I did. And so normally what I do with my guys when I start is I go, of course we go to the forward and all that. And I know we don't have a lot of time with that. I start from the beginning, but I really think step one for me is in the doctor's opinion, right? So I read the doctor's opinion, right? On page XX525, right? Roman numerals in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And it says the doctor's opinion. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous believe that the reader will be interested in the medical estimate of the plan of recovery described in this book. Convincing testimony must surely come from medical men who have had experience with the sufferings of members and who have witnessed our return to health. A well-known doctor, chief physician, and nationally prominent hospital specializing in alcohol and drug addiction gave Alcoholics Anonymous this letter. And then, of course, the doctor starts the letter, right? He had specialized in treatment of alcoholism, right? He had taken care of a guy, and all of a sudden he saw that this guy was hopeless as far as he was concerned, right? Then all of a sudden, in the course of his treatment, certain ideas concerning a possible means of recovery. As part of his rehabilitation, he commenced to present this conception of other alcoholics, pressing upon them that they must do likewise with still others, share their experience, right, with others, help others, right, help others. And so And so this is kind of like how the process started, right? Because now I'm with my temporary sponsor. He's taking me to meetings. He's introducing me to other alcoholics. He's taking me to different types of meetings, big book meetings, step meetings, 12 and 12 meetings, all these types of different meetings, right? I'm hearing different types of things. I'm learning a different new language, right? A language that I never, believe me, prior to recovery, everything I share with you, I learned in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I didn't have this type of language then. My language was a lot different then, right? There was a lot of 4-letter words. There was a lot of ignorance. There was a lot of, contempt, prior to investigation, right? All that type of stuff. And so normally I would go through that and read the letter. And then, of course, it gets down to, on the next page, down towards the end, second to last paragraph, it talks about analogy to alcohol. And I could certainly identify with that, right? Because it's physical, mental, and spiritual, this disease, I've come to find out, right? Through reading this, I realized it's physical, mental, and spiritual, right? As I ingest alcohol into my body, sets off a phenomenon of craving, which turns into a mental obsession, and then I have a spiritual loss of values. Like, I didn't understand all that then, but as I go through this and as I work the process of the program, right, and as I continually admit that I'm an alcoholic and it makes my life unmanageable, I'm powerless over alcohol, and then it makes my life unmanageable, the more I come to see, the more clearer it becomes to me. And so, anyway, so I read that, and then as I go down, then it tells me there's a solution, right? There's a solution. A spiritual as well as an altruistic, right? It's altruistic, right? It's like helping others. And then it tells me I probably should go to detox, right? So I'll get the alcohol out of my body, right? And then my mind is clearer. And so that's kind of what happened, right? I stopped drinking a day at a time. I started asking for help, right? Even though I didn't know what that was, right? And so it's the process. Right. And as I share this with my guys, I tell them, listen, I didn't understand any of this. I just did it. Right. Because they suggested I do it. And then I started to feel a little bit better. Right. I wasn't drinking. And then eventually, as I continue to work this process, I began to learn that not only was I an alcoholic, but that I was powerless over alcohol. Like, once I ingested alcohol into my body, it set off a phenomenon of craving, which turned into a mental obsession, right? I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it started to become clearer to me. And then, slowly but surely, I realized that most of the unmanageability in my life came from alcohol. It wasn't the people, it wasn't the places, it wasn't the things. It was the alcohol that was causing me my problems. This is over a period of time. This has happened gradually over time. I told you I've been sober a long time. I continually admit that I'm powerless over alcohol and that my life is unmanageable, because my life can be unmanageable even without alcohol in it. See, I come to realize that even later on down the line, right, that I can still be unmanageable in my life even without alcohol in my life, right? So this has to be a constant thing, right? It has to be a constant admission, right? And so that's what I do on a daily basis. I continually admit that I'm powerless over alcohol and that my life is unmanageable. I continually remind myself that I have this allergy of alcoholism, right? The physical, the mental, and the spiritual, right? And how do I do that? I interact with other alcoholics. I go to meetings, right? I do the same things today that I started to do back then. Right? I continually do these things. I share this information with other alcoholics. And then what happens is, see, that's the miracle, right? The miracle is that I stop drinking, right? My life becomes somewhat more manageable. It becomes clearer. And then I'm able to share this with other alcoholics. And then I see God work through people. Why? Because they start to apply these principles, they start to apply these steps to their life, and then you watch them light up, right? So this morning when I read there was no coincidences, right? Because I believe there are no coincidences in Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I believe it's all meant to be. It's all supposed to happen, right? It's all happening the way it's supposed to happen. So this morning in the daily reflections, obviously, right, there's no coincidence that the very first step mentions powerlessness. An admission of personal powerlessness over alcohol is what? The cornerstone of the foundation of recovery. So once the admittance comes, then comes the acceptance, then comes the foundation, right? Now I start to build my foundation of recovery. But without admission, right, and without acceptance, I can't even begin that process, right? The process doesn't begin. Because I said many, many times, you know, what's wrong with me? Why is my life the way it is, right? See, I was clueless. I didn't understand why my life is the way it was. And then I come to AA, I start to apply these principles to my life. I admit that I'm powerless over alcohol, my life's unmanageable. And then all of a sudden, that's the cornerstone, right? I start to build the foundation of my recovery. And then it says, I've learned that I do not have the power and the control I once thought I had. See, going through my life, I thought I was making the decisions, right? I thought, I was making those decisions. And in reality, I wasn't making those decisions at all. Alcohol was making those decisions for me. And now I come to realize that, right? As I practice this, as I apply this, right, this first step in my life, then all of a sudden now I understand. I'm beginning to understand why I am the way I am. It says, I am powerless over having just missed the bus. I'm powerless over how other people work or don't work the steps. But I've also learned that I'm not powerless over some things. I'm not powerless over my attitude, right? So if I have a good attitude, then generally my experience has been that I have a good attitude. I'm not powerless over negativity, right? So I have to be negative. If I'm negative, I'm going to bring negative, right? Now I start learning how positive brings positive and negative brings negative. I had no clue. Right? I'm not powerless over assuming responsibility for my own recovery. So who's ultimately responsible for my recovery? I am, right? I am. I have to start taking responsibility for my own recovery. And what does that teach me? It begins to teach me that I need to become responsible, right? Because prior to recovery, in my drinking, I was very irresponsible, right? And that became acceptable to me when I was out there. But now I have to start learning how to be responsible. As I become responsible for my recovery, I become responsible for more things in my life, right? At least this has been my experience. Now, everybody here has had different experiences, I'm sure, and that's quite all right, right? Because we all have different experiences, but this has been my experience. I have the power to exert a positive influence on myself, my loved ones, and the world in which I live. And so as I apply this, as I admit that I'm powerless over alcohol, my life's unmanageable, I don't drink, my life becomes somewhat more manageable, and now I become more positive, right? I go from being a pessimist to an optimist, right? Because when I came here, I was pessimistic about everything, right? Life, and then you die. Right, that was my attitude when I came here. Talk about unmanageable, right? If I wake up every day and then life, and then you die, it's probably not going to be very good, right? It wasn't very good. And so, as I begin to do this, I like down here at the bottom of the bottom of the second page there, it says men and women drink essentially because they like the effect produced by alcohol. I could certainly identify with that. I can still identify with that, right? I like the effect of alcohol. I like the amnesia caused by alcohol. When I drank, I was okay. I was a blackout drinker, right? And so now I realize, I read that, and I'm like, holy cow, that's me, right? I can identify with that, right? Because I like the effect produced by alcohol. I like the insanity of drinking, of alcoholism. Then it says here, the sensation is so elusive that we admit it is injurious. They cannot, after a time, differentiate the truth from the false. And I could so identify with that, right? And as I read this, and as I share this, right, it becomes clear to me. The clarity becomes clear. My eyes begin to open up more, right? And I can really see how the effects of alcohol in my life and on my body and on my mind and on my soul, right? To them, their alcoholic life seems the only normal one, right? Where I came from in Boston, in East Boston, where I grew up, right? I drank like everyone else around me. what I come to find out later on, though, not everybody was like me. Not everybody drank like me, right? Not everybody had the problems. Not everybody's life was unmanageable like my life. They still managed. They still moved on with their lives, right? They continue to move forward in life. What does that mean? That means to me that they're not alcoholics, right? They're just regular folks. They're just normal drinkers, right? They can drink, they can whatever, have fun, do whatever they want to do, and then they just go back to living their normal life. They don't have this allergy to alcohol like I do. Once I ingest alcohol into my body, like I said, it sets off this phenomenon, and I can't stop. And I'm either going to black out or pass out, right? That's kind of how I drink, right? And it doesn't matter who I hurt or what I do. It's irrelevant to me, right? Selfish, self-centered, right? Self-seeking. That's who I am when I'm out there. Then it says here, the restless, irritable, and discontented, right? I was always restless, irritable, and discontent. I was never happy where I was. There was always something better, right? I could have a good job. There was a better job. I could be in a nice relationship with a beautiful girl, but there was always another beautiful girl. I was never happy where I was. And that was through my whole life, right? I was restless. I was irritable and discontent. I could identify with that when I read this. Right? I can identify with that. I can still identify with that, right? Because once again, I can be all these things and get all these things and sober, right? You stay sober long enough and you're going to experience some of this stuff. At least I have experienced some of this stuff, right? Now, I've had plenty of contentment, plenty of love, plenty of all that stuff in my life, but I can still get back to some of this other stuff. And so what does that mean? So now, because of an understanding, restless, irritable, discontent, right? Now, when I get restless, irritable, and discontent, I realize that my alcoholism once again is rearing its ugly head. And then what do I got to do? I got to talk to my sponsor. I got to share. I got to make amends. I got to do what I got to do right away in order to clean house and move forward again, right? Once again, admitting that I'm powerless over alcohol, that it makes my life unmanageable, with or without alcohol, really, right? Then the other thing I learned early on in my recovery, prior to taking step one, like completely, was that I used to watch other people drink with impunity. And I used to say, how come they can drink and I can't? Why can't I do what they do? Right? Or I'm going to do what they do because they do what they do. They don't get in trouble. They don't get DUIs. They don't get in car accidents. What about me? Right? And then obviously it says here, if I stop for a while, then I succumb to the desire again. Because if I don't practice this, I don't admit this, right? It tells me that I'm going to succumb to this again. Right? I'm going to succumb to the desire to drink again. Right? And then what will happen? I'll drink, and then the phenomenon of craving will develop once again. Right? And then ultimately it says, as I go a little further down here, it says, this is repeated over and over again. And unless this person can experience an entire psychic change, there is very little hope for his recovery. Right? So there's very little hope for my recovery if I don't experience this psychic change. And I believe the admission, the acceptance, the unmanageability, and admitting all that begins the process of this psychic change. That's what happened for me. It began that process. I began to build the foundation of recovery, right? Step one. Of course, how many times did I say to people, I can't go on like this, right? I can't go on like this. I got to change my life. Right? I got to change. So I guess something's got to change. I got to do something, right? And I would try, and I would put my best foot forward, and I would really want to do that. The problem was I didn't know how to do it. I didn't know how to take responsibility for myself, right? And so what would I do? I would put my best foot forward. I would, kind of get it together, whatever, I got to stop drinking. I got to stop using, I'll do that. And it's funny when you do that, things do start to come back together, right? They start to come back together. right? You get dressed up a little bit, you fill out a job application, you know, you get a little job, you start making a little bit of money, right? You're cutting back on the drinking, and then all of a sudden, you know, it's time to celebrate once again. And then that phenomenon of craving starts, and then everything is lost once again. Everything is lost once again. Obviously, this is prior to admission, right? Prior to admission, right? That happened to me thousands of times along the way, thousands of times. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So that talks about going on the wagon. How many times did I go on the wagon? I went on the wagon many times, right? That's what I'm talking about, right? I went on the wagon many times in my drinking career. I got to stop. But yet, you know, eventually the wagon would stop. I'd get off, and then I'd be back to where I was before. And then what comes along with that? The guilt, the shame, and the remorse. Once again, I did it again. Right? Many times. Then again, as I read down here again, it says here, most alcoholics, chronic alcoholics are doomed. I read that. I'm like, holy cow. If I keep moving on like this, I'm going to die. Right? And there came a time in my drinking career where dying was like acceptable behavior, right? That was like accepted, right? Because I watched people drink like I did and do other things. And I watched what happened to them. They ended up in jails, institutions, and they died. And then eventually that became acceptable to me, right? What's one was unacceptable becomes acceptable to me. Why? Because I don't understand, and I haven't really quite admitted yet that I got a problem. I ain't got a problem. And then eventually I become hopeless, right? Homeless, hopeless, I become jobless, relationshipless, you know, all these lists I become, you know, losses. And then I have no hope. And then I come to a place in my drinking where I'm so hopeless that this is just the way it is, right? This is the way it is. This is my lot in life, and this is the way it's always going to be. And little do I know, right? Little do I know. And then when I get to hopelessness, it says then I accept the plan outlined in the book, right? And then 1 year later, right, a year of sobriety, right? It says here, and I experienced a very strange sensation. I knew the man by name and partly recognized his features, but their all resemblance ended. From a trembling, despairing, nervous wreck had emerged a man brimming over with self-reliance and contentment. I talked with him for some time, but was not able to bring myself to feel that I had known him before. To me, he was a stranger, and so he left me. A long time has passed since he returned to alcoholism, and I can identify with that, right? Early on, I couldn't identify with that, but now I can identify with that, right? Because people see me, right? Or I see other people that I've been able to help in the past, and I'm like, where do I know them from? Man, he looks different. He acts different, right? What is that? To me, that's the psychic change, right? They've had that psychic change through the process of admission. The patient had made his own deciding he was hopeless, blah, blah, blah. And so ultimately, at the end of this, it says, I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through and through. Perhaps he came to scoff, he remained to pray. And so I asked myself the question, right? My sponsor asked me the question. He says, Rich, he says, do you think you're an alcoholic, or are you an alcoholic? And I said, yes, I'm an alcoholic. And he said, okay, you've admitted you're an alcoholic and your life, you're powerless over alcohol, right? Yes, I am. Why are you powerless over alcohol? I'm powerless over alcohol because when I ingest alcohol into my body, it sets off a phenomenon of craving, which turns into a mental obsession. And then I have a spiritual loss of values. That's why I'm an alcoholic. Okay, I'm an alcoholic. And does it make your life unmanageable? Yes, it does. Because when I honestly look back at my life and I look at the drinking situations and I look at my life, everything in my life revolved around drinking, right? My relationships, my jobs, my family, everything, it all revolved around drinking, right? And that started very early on for me. I mean, I grew up in an Italian, Catholic Italian family in Boston, you know what I mean? And every family function I ever went to, there was always alcohol, right? There was always someone, doing whatever. Eventually, as I got a little older, I found out people were doing other substances, right? And what did that seem to me? That seemed like acceptable behavior, right? And it is acceptable behavior for non-alcoholics. The problem is, I have this disease and I don't know I have it, right? Because it's a self-diagnosed disease, right? So I don't know I have it, right? Until when? Until I set it off, right? And how does it get set off? Once again, I pick up a drink, and that sets off this whole thing, right? And so I don't want to do that anymore, right? I come to a place in my alcoholism where I'm in trouble. I need a way out. I need somewhere to go. I need help, right? For the first time in my life, I admit that I need help, because it was many, many times, I knew I needed help a long time ago, right? But God forbid I would ever ask for help. God forbid I would ever admit that, I was weak, right? Or that I couldn't handle my alcohol, or that I couldn't handle life, right? Because if, I don't know, you talk to normal folks, right? And you tell them, oh, I can't handle life, man. They want to put you on medication. They want to lock you up. They want to put you away. I'm not going to tell anybody that, right? God forbid. Especially where I come from. Men don't talk about their feelings. They didn't share their feelings. They didn't tell you what was really going on, right? And so what is that to me? That's like the delusion, right? That I'm going to be all right. Somehow I'm going to come out of this. And I never came out of it until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous. By the grace of God, we got to Alcoholics Anonymous, and when I got here, once again, I admitted that I was powerless over alcohol, that my life was unmanageable, right? And then I go to the 12 and 12, right? And it says, who cares to admit complete defeat? That's what I just talked about. I didn't want to admit complete defeat, right? I didn't want to admit defeat. Right? That was for like suckers. That was for weak people. Weak men didn't admit they were defeated. It says, of course, practically no one. Every natural instinct cries out against the idea of personal powerlessness. Right? I should be able to handle the situation. I should be able to do the work. I should be able to get this done. Little did I know I couldn't get it done. Couldn't get it done as hard as I tried. He says, it's truly awful to admit that glass in hand, we have warped our minds into such an obsession for destructive drinking that only an act of providence can remove it from us. No other kind of bankruptcy is like this one. Alcohol now became the rapacious creditor, bleeds us of all self-sufficiency, and all will resist its demands. Once this stark fact is accepted, our bankruptcy as going human concerns is complete. Right? I came to a place in my drinking and my alcoholism where I was bankrupt. I had nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. Right? I was either going to I was going to drink till I died, or I was going to stop. Right? I was on that jumping off place they talk about. Right? Because you get to that jumping off place. Right? And I believe when I was there in 1989, that's where I was. I was at that jumping off place, right? Drinking wasn't working for me anymore. It stopped working for me a long time prior to that, but I didn't know. But then at that particular point in my life, I'm like, this is not working anymore. It's not doing what I wanted to do anymore. So I better search out something else. And so I start to search out something else. What else? I don't know. There's a lot there, obviously, right? There's a lot there, right? But ultimately, right, where does it start? It starts with the admission. It starts with the acceptance, right? I'm rich. I'm an alcoholic. I'm powerless over alcohol, and it makes my life unmanageable. And then that just opens the door, right? That's the willingness, right? The honesty, right? I get honest about my alcoholism, right? I get honest with myself, right? Then I get honest with others later on, right? But initially I get honest with myself. Then I become willing, right? To do whatever it takes, right? The willingness, honesty, open-mindedness, right? Then I get open-minded, right? As I admit this, as I start to build this foundation of recovery, right? I become more open-minded. And then my mind opens, and then it becomes clearer and clearer and clearer, right? And then my life becomes clearer and clearer and clearer. What becomes clear? Clear that I'm an alcoholic. All this other stuff is other stuff, right? But I'm clear. And I continue to stay clear today that my number one problem in my life is my alcoholism, right? And my number one priority is my recovery. Before anything. Because if I leave my recovery to other things, this has been my experience, and I've experienced this in recovery. I haven't relapsed. I haven't drank, right? But I told you, these things can happen to you even sober, right? I can get sick sober, right? Why? Because I start to put other things in front of my recovery, just like I did in the past, right? I can start putting relationships. I can start putting jobs. I can start putting people, places, and things in front of my recovery. They become more important to me, money, whatever, right? And then all of a sudden, I start to lose my priority, right? And then I start to get sick again. And then what do I got to do? Well, whatever I gotta get back to basics once again. Now I know if you don't leave the basics, you don't have to go back to the basics. But if you do, then you go back. And it's okay. Like I've learned today, like it's okay not to be okay. It's okay to have unmanageability in my life, right? But it's not okay to use. It's not okay to drink. It's not okay. It's not okay. For me, it's just not okay, right? For me, to drink is to die, or worse, to live, right? And suffer, right? And suffer in that place. And I've been in that place. I was in that place. Today, I don't want to suffer. I want to live, right? I want to be happy. I want to be joyous. I want to be free. Now, am I happy, joyous, and free all the time? No. But generally, I am. I have peace of mind today. I have peace of spirit, right? I have a spirit today, right? When I started drinking, I lost my spirit, right? I had a lot of hopes, had a lot of dreams, right? Had a full of spirit, full of life. And slowly but surely, as my alcoholism grew, progressed, because this progresses, right? It's a progressive disease, right? Gets worse, never gets better. I'm afraid. I have a healthy fear still of alcohol today. I watch what this stuff does to people today, you know what I mean? And not that it's worse than it was before or whatever, it just is what it is, right? But bottom line is that I won't see that if I'm not continually staying in the process. I just recently, finished another 4th step and 5th step. I'm doing another 7th and 8th step, you know what I mean? Because I build up stuff in recovery. That's why I continue to do the same things today that I've been doing since the beginning. Like I told you, this morning I got up, I admitted that I'm an alcoholic, that I'm powerless over it, then it makes my life unmanageable, and then I make a decision. What's the decision? Then I make my decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him, and then I go about my life, and then I do the rest. And then eventually, of course, you start practicing 10, 11, and 12, right? But we're going to get into that as we go, right? So I'm looking forward to the next 12 months. By the grace of God, we live. I live. Because you never know, right? Today is only today, right? It's only promised today, right? I don't know about tomorrow. I don't know. Yesterday's over. And so I get right back in the day, right? Today I got back in the day. And generally when I'm living in the day, life goes pretty good. I'm not too far ahead of myself. I'm not too far behind myself. I'm like right where I'm supposed to be. I'm in the present, right? We just went through Christmas, right? I'm in the present, right? And today, where am I? Well, it's 10:01 on a Monday afternoon, and I'm at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm sharing a little bit of experience, strength, and hope with you, right? And my hope and prayer is just that I don't drink today. I don't use today. And if I don't, I'm a rip-roaring success, right? I'm a success. Doesn't matter all that other stuff for me, right? My number one priority today is not to drink and not to use. And then if I do that, I have a shot at life. I have hope. I have faith. I have love. I have all the things that I always wanted in my life, right? But without that, then I lose all that, right? Like today, I put a lot of my Christmas decorations, and I have a faith, hope, and love. I have this little thing. And so I put them all away today, and it reminded me, like, if I drink, I'm going to put all that away. And I don't know if it'll ever come back, right? Because I watch and I see, and then I see people and it doesn't come back. They only get worse, right? And so all I do is try to help them move forward. And so anyway, I'm an alcoholic. I'm powerless over alcohol. My life's unmanageable. My name's Rich, and I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for having me today.
This concludes this episode of Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast. Follow us on Facebook for past shows and updates, and enjoy free access to twice daily support meetings. Friends in Recovery, the Addiction Recovery Podcast, is available on Facebook, Podbean, iTunes, and YouTube 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Since 1992, Genesis House has been helping real people heal from addiction on their private recovery campus in beautiful Palm Beach County, Florida. Their family-owned program is accredited by the Joint Commission and offers detox and dual diagnosis treatment in a comfortable and confidential setting. At Genesis House, they focus on treating the underlying causes of addiction. Their comprehensive approach includes psychiatric care, individual and small group therapy, trauma healing techniques, and holistic care including yoga, massage, and animal-assisted therapy. After treatment, their clients enjoy the lifelong support of a nationwide network of Genesis House alumni. Call Genesis House today at 1-800-737-0933 to speak with someone who understands. Visit them on the web at www.genesishouse.net. It's time to start your journey to a long and successful recovery.